Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Courtney Lukitsch for a round two. Courtney was quite good last time I had her. There's a bunch of people doing PR. I believe Courtney being one of the few to do it right. We're going to talk about modern PR today, notably how not to do PR. I'd quote the Musk case on that one as of late, and how to do good PR. Zuck being a great example of how to go from bad apple to good apple, sort of. This podcast is presented to you by podfire.com. If you want to start your podcast, if you want to monetize your podcast through AdSense dollars, through sponsor dollars, and through lead gen dollars, you can go to podfire.com. We have a free ebook and a masterclass awaiting you there. Courtney, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself again and what you're up to nowadays.
Sure. Thanks for reconnecting. As I mentioned at the top of our conversation, I'm just back from working in New York and also in Dallas. I'm presently on our Gulf Coast office, or the America Coast, as we're now referring to it, if you've been following the recent proposed name change. So as a super communicator, I'm always interested in connecting with experts like you, and we're really focused now this year looking at how AI can benefit our research, our analytics, and 360 marketing PR, which is very different from obviously the way it's been done traditionally.
What has been new in the PR game as of late? Like good cases, bad cases. I mean, Trump won the election again. That's PR masterclass, not for the best of reasons. But let's take Elon, for example. Elon, as of late, has been a lot on the public scene. I think he's getting out of his shell, right? And due to his autistic nature, I think he's sort of learning the social weaves of PR and what to do, what not to do, or maybe it's working. Maybe his stuff is working. Uh, what's your opinion on the Elon PR machine as of late?
Well, again, he's never really employed any kind of traditional PR or advertising. If you're aware, Tesla was grown virally, no advertising whatsoever. And of course, that was due to Silicon Valley and seeing it as a prestige or luxury must-have item, largely among those tech titans that you're now referring to who are sitting at the inauguration. So clearly, from a viral standpoint, he understands that. But I would say the takeover of X was a debacle. I would say that he is pretty overexposed. I mean, it was fascinating. I don't know if you followed CES earlier this month, but he was there. He was on the podium. I mean, you start to wonder if he's kind of cloned himself. So, it's what we kind of refer to in the business as jumping the shark, right? Where you're in too many places, too accessible all the time. So I think that that's already kind of catching up with him. And I think you see from a public perception standpoint, which of course is always the biggest barometer, whether that just be nationally in North America or globally around the world, that an ego contest of that magnitude might be short-lived. But we'll see. Time will tell.
What about Zuck? Zuck is a clear success, in my opinion. Started loosening up. He did hire PR firms before. Did he fire his PR team, or did he just hire a better one?
Yeah, I think he's mowed through a lot of teams, like many of these titans as they have scaled their businesses, right? So you also have to look at scales of maturation. I think you're going through that in your own business and your own scaling, right? Is you see you're different at 20 than you are at 30, and now he's in his 40s. So, some people call it sort of a retro 90s vibe, the rock and the gold chain. He's grown his hair out, the clothes, the attention to attire, and sort of a little more fashion forward. So I think that was somewhat inevitable, but obviously he's looking to now become a trillionaire. He has to sort of toe the line in terms of regulatory. A lot of people maybe not realizing the United States and certainly in Canada, where you originally hailed from, that many of these technology platforms didn't have any oversight, and now they do. And so it's a question of the impact on future generations too. And the research is bearing out that social media has had prolific impact on society, good, bad, and otherwise. So that's a larger conversation. But in terms of repositioning and pivoting, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge. I mean, I just started following the press secretary for the new White House, and that's a very tall order because, as you know, the president goes off script if he has one at all. So, to try to media train or rein in that kind of behavior. For example, he gave one approved speech in-house at the rotunda a few days ago, and then he went outside and had several more that were completely, uh, free free flowing, let's say, that which is his style. And clearly that's why he probably got voted in, because he's willing to, behave like a maverick.
Yes, and that's probably one of the few things I respect about Trump. He's willing to say what he thinks, if only if it was a bit more calculated and good for society. That's another topic. Um, let's talk about Zuck for a moment, because he seems like the woke movement like really got extinguished, which I think is sort of good, because it's great to give freedom and liberties to people, but sometimes they abuse and they want more and more and more, and then we start weaving away from truth, as we've seen in the last couple of years. Zuck has embraced MMA, which is like sort of a really macho thing. He started spending a bit more and sort of leading a more hedonistic life. I don't think he has gone in the wrong path necessarily like Elon did in many ways, but he started like giving a glimpse of his life and started being himself. I mean, his face when he was testifying in front of the Congress told that a very dark story, right, about his life and the stresses he went through. Do you feel that people are more accepting of how these people may live their lives, and they should be fully transparent and show really who they are, or should there be like some degree of moderation in what they show to the world?
No, that's an excellent question, and one that we deal with consistently when we're positioning leaders, because as you may recall, I work exclusively with the C-suite, but with organizations as a whole, right? So when you're looking to elevate or reposition or change management overall, which is what we sort of call this categorically, you want to add this human scale, right? This human perspective, because I think with all the technology, it's very easy to hide behind a screen. I admire what you're doing because you've gone live with video. I mean, a lot of people will just sit in a radio studio and you hear people's voices, but you don't see actual sort of human interface. I mean, I went through entire stages in business where I had younger employees hiding behind screens because they didn't know how to have conversations anymore. So, yes, if Zuck is showing his humanity, that's again a sign of maturity, and also a sign that that life cycle of hiding behind an Instagram and not necessarily being very performative, right, is some language that maybe you would understand in that respect. But yeah, in terms of the language, I remember going to conference in Washington D.C. and it was so codified and so almost inaccessible to people who weren't in a certain group that it became sort of a subculture, so to speak, that then was meant to proliferate into wider academia and cultural institutions. And while some of it was certainly healthy, if not inevitable, now you're seeing you see overcorrections and then you see course corrections. And I think in reality, if we had a middle way, which is what I think now we're really struggling to come back to, which is maybe seen as a dated model. We're so polarized, and that manifests in communication, right? Because you're seeing this sort of coded language, whether it's on the left, the right, or wherever you want to look on the spectrum. It's almost as though certain groups become disincluded or disenfranchised or unaware of what the meaning of particular words mean in certain communities. So I think that that's always a little bit of a dangerous course, and one that I don't know that we would have expected maybe in 2025.
Right. What about Sam Altman's PR strategy? He seems to be pretty open on Twitter, even about his personal life, right? His sister suing him. He's really
Right.
open about everything. He seems to be doing things well, plus is building the world's most valuable company. Do you think he has a PR team? Because OpenAI's video seems quite vetted by an agency, or do you think he just free flows? By the way, in the
No,
middle of
I
chaos,
think
right? Like, yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, chaos is sort of baked in, right? Because that's partially the brand, if you think about it. And we
Okay.
have an agent of chaos, and you keep using these examples, and they are chaos models of chaos agents, and clearly that's being embraced by certain segments of society globally, not just, nationally. So to go back to Altman, I think it's, he has to forecast a very broad um, sort of net, and then he also has to keep it very close to him because, as you know, they just got a huge infusion of money, and that will help them, build this network out. And meanwhile, the flip side of that needs to be talked about more is how does that impact the environment? How does that impact climate and sustainability? And it's all part and parcel of one dialogue, but it gets chopped into pieces depending on who's lobbying and who's sort of shouting the loudest. So yes, it's important to show the face of humanity, but these guys they've already kind of done what they came to do. They came, they played, they fought in their MMA match. Now they're doing the Zen approach, which is I'm going to show my true self and then perhaps even walk away in the near term. We don't know that they're really in it for you know what I mean? Like Elon's in it, he's in his 50s. Will Zuckerberg be around another 10 years doing what he's doing? Maybe, maybe not. Will Altman? Probably not. Just my
I think
speculation.
they'll all be around. They're mavericks. They're here to stay pretty much forever. If we crack longevity in the next decade, but
Right.
Sam Altman's strategy is
I
so
mean, with the business,
interesting.
stay with
Oh,
the business that they're at is what my point was.
like
Yeah.
yeah, maybe
I mean, they might walk
OpenAI,
away. Yeah.
Zuck and Facebook. We're already seeing. I mean, it's not fading out, right? But like TikTok is taking over, which could lead to a next question of mine. And Elon, I was thinking about that. Objectively, his businesses haven't impacted the world that much. I mean, Tesla, okay, sure, green energy for the 0.1%, um, and then launching rockets in space. Anyway, that's another topic. I want to keep
Yes.
on talking a bit more about Sam Altman here because his PR strategy is quite interesting. One, because he keeps losing high level members in his team, right? And
Yeah.
OpenAI has been around for like 5 to 6 years, and they're moving freakingly fast, and
Yes.
that means that some players are not gonna hold on to the rocket ship. They're just gonna
Right.
drop. And second, we all talk about these AGI claims, right? And he's constantly dealing with like people thinking that AGI has been achieved and starting rumors with that, right? So, yeah, for these two reasons, I think his PR strategy is great. One, do you think he's reacting well on Twitter, just mentioning, okay, this guy has gone away, he's into his own path right now, I wish him the best? And yeah, second, if AGI is achieved, how should that be announced to the world?
Yeah, I mean, inevitably things will all become open source, right? I mean, that was really the genesis of the internet, was that it was supposed to be democratic and not turn into sort of this garbage heap of advertising and exclusivity. So I think that could be the next wave, right? Where we see some of that more monolithic behavior go by the wayside, and we actually do start to see a more democratic internet and the manifestation of AI as it impacts the workplace and humanity. So you can look at it in a very utopian fashion. And yes, I think he has to manage that because think of the non-disclosure agreements attached to what he's doing. And yes, that was my point earlier, is that you are going to have people who don't want to be along for that long ride. That's my point. Like, I'll be surprised if even he is, because as you have seen, they tried to get rid of him. He comes back, on and on, right? So there's always going to be this kind of roller coaster attached to this enterprise within his organization. So that's sort of structural business model. And then the technology, as you said, is working at such a fast pace that there's probably a very lean team actually that knows exactly what's going on. And I think that is the future of a lot of even consolidation we're seeing in my industry, in the agency world. And I don't know if you follow that, but as you know, it manifests in a lot of ways that money is spent for advertising and major life and world events, everything from the Olympics to the Super Bowl. We're seeing this mass consolidation where they're just be ridding of hundreds of people, like cutting out the entire middle of organizations, which impacts thousands and thousands of people. So yeah, it's happening in real time. And so to your point, it's not like it's far away in the next year or 2 or 3 years. It's right now, IRL.
And do you feel that people should just be able to say whatever they want out there without any backlash? Is it about people receiving that information being more open-minded? Is it about me mentioning that opinion in a more educated way, in a less offensive way, because I'm an open source guy, right? I say everything that I have in mind pretty much all the time on my Twitter, for good and bad. Pretty sure people are gonna extract some stuff about it later, but I'm sort of ready to fight with my opinion, which is that I believe in putting my mind out there, feeding this mind to an AI, making sense out of it, and improving on these philosophies of mine. So is the world just ready to accept any opinions out there, and is that good for us?
Well, I mean, I think it's already happening, right? I mean, that's what we were talking about at the top of this conversation. I think that's what helped win the election, because that was very much stream of consciousness. None of that was planned or programmed. So yes, to answer that question. And I think, again, taking a more idealistic notion of AI, you can, as you have said, train AI. You can train yourself to be better. We can have an archive of learning and case studies and built work and projects that we can then train people against, right? So, I mean, it should lead to optimization as opposed to obliteration, right? So again, I see this very positive way. I'm all for open communication, but yeah, uneducated sort of bigotry, misogyny, bias is certainly gets flagged. And I mean, the court of public opinion and the way the internet runs, if you keep using X as an example, what we used to call Twitter, I'm not even sure, it seems like an echo chamber at this point to me. I think the one thing that Meta did well was create threads. I think it's a much more distilled, refined, again, I'm coming from a very, East Coast elite maybe perspective on how to operate media, but I've been doing it for a very long time and it's been very successful. And I don't think it rules anybody out. If anything, we've been more inclusive and we've broadened the definition of a lot of categories. What is art? What is design? What is architecture? What does, what qualifies as a good idea or a good conversation or a podcast? I mean, even 2-3 years ago, like you were so far ahead in identifying this as a very prolific channel, whereas other people were sort of saying like, oh, that's radio, we don't do that. Well, fast forward, it helped win the election. I just looked at stats this morning, everything from the Harris poll to, Annenberg, and, looking at the way that influencer campaign was managed from within the White House was, again, a masterclass. So, I tip my hat.
And on the inclusion side of things, which is sort of unrelated to PR, how much should we help someone? Is it until they're good by their own? Because I feel it's somewhat toxic to help someone forever and too much, right? It's just like if my parents were super rich and I'd have this safety net. How much is too much and how much is just enough to give everyone a shot, sort of?
Yeah, I mean, you're going back to sort of that meritocracy value system, right? I mean, it's the American way to sort of prove yourself, get your hands dirty, do hard work, and work your way up. I think what we're seeing, and again, I just came from New York, where you're dealing with a whole educated class of probably the wealthiest generational financial transfer in the history of the country, if not the world. So, people who necessarily have that level of entree are certainly going to move faster than somebody who has to work their way up. I mean, I often say that now I'm involved in equity deals and a lot of merger and consolidation activity on behalf of our clients. And many of those businesses were bootstrapped, mine included. And I don't know that in today's New York that people can really do that. Like, you have to have an equity partner, you have to come from a wealthy family, you have to have a trust fund, what have you. That concept of bootstrapping, if you even know what that means, I think is anathema to today's startup and business environment.
What are your top goals for this year in 2025 vs your goals of last year in 2024?
I love this question because last year was really an excellent year. It showed me sort of how the models had changed in the agency world in general. If we secured lots of cover stories and big deals and amazing partnerships for our clients, and I just realized, the way that the agency world has been working really for the last decade or so, it's just completely shifted. So I see myself using my expertise as a consultant, helping to build and scale businesses. In other words, I have a very deep network, one that you are in the process of building yourself, and to be able to tap into that and sort of turn the model on its head and not do things the same way, everything from even potentially changing the name of the business itself and migrating it into a completely different model. I mean, I think it's happening in real time, and the companies that come to us are so smart and they've done their research, because I don't solicit business, that they say, hey, we can partner with this company and we can go 10x, and all my clients are going 10x on behalf of their clients. So if you kind of do the math, you see the multiples and what can be achieved in even 6 to 9 months is pretty incredible. And that was in last year's market. So this year's market, like you, I'm into the math and the goal setting and the how can I surpass myself. But it's, again, finding those clients where I can either merge them, get them acquired, or get them huge equity deals so that they can kind of go to that next level. And same with us. So.
Right. And how are you acquiring these clients? What's the main lead generation channel?
Well, as I mentioned, they've come to us. So I don't know if it's just the internet or some of these interesting podcasts that I've been doing with you, but we don't do a ton of outward marketing. I think we get a lot of referrals. And again, the smarter companies, they do their due diligence and they come to us. And, I think they're always surprised because people don't know what to ask for. I remember being in a meeting with clients this time last year, and I sort of said, well, did anybody go to business school? And I was talking to the principals. I hope somebody's gone to business school here. And what's your runway? And, all these kind of things. And I mean, it was fascinating to me because they had prepared answers. And I think, I saw the sort of collective light bulb go off. Like, oh, hey, this isn't just about press. Like, this person can really bring this sort of sense of humanity to our brand, to our clients, and help elevate us in a way where we don't have to do this huge rebranding, but we can market ourselves and tell people what we do in a very sophisticated way, and also reach those 10x goals in the near term. And again, this is because that particular client was very receptive to taking direction. They're super creative, they're incredibly smart, they have a very go for it, like like really pushing 20 hours a day mentality. And I mean, it was just so exhilarating to see that success level, because they embraced it. Like, they didn't, like, some clients will take it to them and then they kind of keep it away, like, whoa, that's too much work, we're not ready for that. Whereas they're like, bring it always. So it's such a fun client engagement to have.
Love it. Where can people find out more about you, Courtney?
On LinkedIn, which is where you and I think are broadcasting right now. That's probably the best channel, because then again, I like to utilize my LinkedIn as a C-level, very high resource, that when people connect with me, then they get kind of tapped into that network and sort of see, I vet things pretty carefully, right? In other words, I don't accept kind of queries from everyone. So I try to be selective but judicious. If somebody needs help and we can't help them, then I send them to somebody who can. So that's the best place.